This is the Dreadful Podcast from TV Podcast Industries, and we're here with Penny Dreadful City of Angels, Episode 1, Santa Muerte.
That boy, you leave him be.
But why trouble yourself with him? With any of them? What are they but frightened animals in the mud, scratching for more mud, fully unworthy of your devotion and care? I'll prove it to you, just wait.
How will you do that?
By letting them be who they are. By making all their dreams come true. By whispering to them. All mankind needs to be the monster he truly is being told he can. Will you try to stop me?
I have no heart for the living.
For anything. Now open your arms, sister. I'll give you many souls today.
Welcome back, fellow Penny Faithful. This is TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, the first episode, Santa Muerte. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, Penny Faithful. I am one of your other hosts, John. Welcome back.
Yes, and rounding out the trio, I am Chris, dreadful by name, dreadful by nature, and dreadful at being a podcast host.
That's so untrue.
Let's see how this goes.
It's so untrue. If you haven't joined us for any of other TV Podcast Industries, Chris is our regular third host of TV Podcast Industries, but didn't join us for our retrospective series, our 3-season discussion of Penny Dreadful. We did that with a little bit with Ray, one of our other friends, and mostly myself and John, going back through 26 episodes of Penny Dreadful over the course of the last 4 weeks. So while some Penny Dreadful fans have been missing the show and had 4 years to collect their thoughts on that show, we had about a week from when that ended to when this started. So.
What we can 6 days.
Yeah, what we can definitely say is it's certainly a lot sunnier in this Penny Dreadful.
It is. It's a lot brighter.
Yes, less of that London rain, grime, and smog, and end of days, at least so far.
So far, although that seems to be on the horizon. Also, definitely want to mention that we did all the planning for our 26-episode retrospective season, planning for the release date of the 26th, and I'm laughing now because I constantly was getting this date confused. I was constantly saying it was released on the 26th or the 24th throughout the series. I kept noticing in my editing. And yes, Showtime did actually drop the first episode on Friday, the 24th of April, before anybody knew it was coming out. They were doing a countdown themselves on their own Twitter account and on their Instagram account and on their Facebook account. And then suddenly they went, actually, it's here for you to watch, which was a lovely surprise.
Yeah, it was a bit of guerrilla marketing. I was just like, we woke up on Friday and everyone was like, yay, it's here. I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. No, I planned for Sunday night, Monday morning. What's going on here, people? It's like, this has just completely upset my plans. I am personally put out. What do you do to be Showtime? Come on.
But I think the actual reason was on Showtime, Homeland, the flagship show really for Showtime, finished this weekend. It finished the slot just before this episode was about to air. So I think they needed to get Penny Dreadful out a little bit beforehand as well, just to get a little bit of share of mind, because when you have a show as big as Homeland ending on one night and starting a new show, you need to get a little bit of PR out there as well. So fair dues to them. It seems to have gotten loads of people to have watched it. So everybody seems to have been pretty happy with it. We're going to kick into our discussion on Penny Dreadful pretty quickly. We're going to be talking about the first episode, but overall, guys, what did you think? Chris, first experience in Penny Dreadful in a very long time. I know you watched a couple of episodes of the first show. What did you think of the opener for City of Angels?
I'm intrigued. I think I on our personal kind of chat, I went, interesting. And John came back going, interesting or interesting? And I'm like, I don't know. Is there a third option of like, interesting? I'm intrigued. Mm-hmm. It's definitely exposition heavy, but you need that from an opening.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Yeah, they definitely come straight out of the kind of gate with some very heavy topics.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
I got Watchmen vibes straight away, and I think that that for me personally now is a seal of approval. If they can continue this at that same level and with that certain je ne sais quoi, then I'm in for this whole season.
Excellent. And John, as our resident fan of Penny Dreadful overall, to begin with, what do you think?
I really liked it. I really loved the characters, and I think it's different. It is different from Penny Dreadful, the first 3 seasons, but there's a similarity in that, and I think it'll be interesting because I think there's a lot of different threads here, as Chris was saying. That really need to just kind of keep in mind, I think, all the time. But I mean, for me, I suppose I would just split them up into that great opening discussion between the 2 sisters. That one day, there will come a day when it will be nation versus nation, race versus race, and brother versus brother. And I think that really encapsulates how we see Magda in this episode. The difference between Nazi Germany and obviously the land of the free and the USA. You've got whites and Mexicans, but also the other different communities within LA. And then you have the Vega family and the 3 brothers, but also with the sister and the mother. What are these battles that are going to happen here? So and John Logan weaves a really good dialogue and spell. I mean, there's some I just still need to learn and understand what they mean. Some of the terminology from then, like I think JDs, I have no idea what that's an abbreviation for. And obviously some of the racist slang, I suppose, is okay, trying to understand where that's coming from. So, and like you say, yeah, it's dealing with relatively tough topics, but wrapped up in this lovely world of Mexican Day of the Dead folklore, which is the thing that really I'm equally excited to find out more about.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's what's making it really interesting for me. I was thinking about it after watching the first episode, because I saw a lot of kind of commentary from fans of the original series of Penny Dreadful going, oh, but this isn't like the Victorian era. This doesn't include the monsters that we know from that show. And I thought about it afterwards going, if John Logan had come up with this concept for a show, had the character of Magda and the character of Santa Muerte in there and did this episode and just called it City of Angels, everybody would be complaining and go, well, he's just doing Penny Dreadful set in LA, so why not use the name? But if he did use it, and people are wondering why he did use it that way. But I think it makes lots of sense from John Logan, and I definitely enjoyed this first episode. But just a reminder, if you haven't listened to our podcast before, make sure you subscribe to us over on tvpodcastindustries.com. You can pop over there. You can leave a voicemail for us if you have any thoughts about any of the episodes. And of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts about any of the episodes as we go along. Just email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com.
Yeah, and remember, any good or evil podcast catcher you can follow us on. So please search TV Podcast Industries.
Or Dreadful Podcast.
And as well, we will be continuing our table or pub quiz as well. So there will be questions to answer if you want to join in with the chance of receiving the goodies, the Penny Dreadful goodies. Yes, probably a severed limb or maybe a thumb in the post.
I hope not. I definitely don't want to be attached to a thumb. I do want to be attached to 2 thumbs, actually. But yes, these are usually table quiz, pub quiz questions for the very eagle-eyed viewers amongst you. So you may have to rewatch the episode after John gives you the question later on. Let's get into our discussion about Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, episode 1, Santa Muerte. This episode was directed by Paco Cabezas, who directed 4 episodes of season 3 of Penny Dreadful. We mentioned before that we're really looking forward to seeing his take on it, because the director J.A. Bayona had directed the original 2 episodes of the first series of Penny Dreadful and really set the tone for the show. And I think that's why Paco Cabezas has been given this first episode and the second episode to direct, because he's kind of bringing his style to the show, kind of setting up the kind of visual library, I suppose, that we're going to see for the rest of the series here. Once again, as we mentioned, written by showrunner John Logan. We haven't talked about him in a while, so if you're a newcomer to the show, let's got to give you a breakdown of who John Logan is as well. He's the creator of the original series, obviously, as we've mentioned. He wrote 24 episodes of that show as well, so not only showrunner, but writer of almost every episode. He worked with Sam Mendes on the Bond films Spectre and Skyfall. He wrote Alien Covenant, Star Trek Nemesis, Gladiator, and Last Samurai, so he's a very well-respected writer of many movies and many TV shows as well. So
yeah, and I mean, certainly with the original Penny Dreadful, he really brought that literary element to the language and of the time, I suppose, for Victorian England. He's a great writer, and I think he knows how to craft a story, and that's why I think really exciting to see how these threads progress over this 10 episode series.
Yeah. He's also a first generation Irish American as well, which he says informs him about obviously this idea of immigrants in America. So he's very aware of the immigrant experience in the US as well. So I think that's quite interesting perspective to come from as well. John, do you want to give us the summary for the first episode of Penny Dreadful's City of Angels?
Sure. It's Los Angeles, 1938. Newly promoted LAPD detective Tiago Vega and his partner Louis Michner investigate a murder. While at City Hall, Tiago's activist brother Raul battles with the fiery councilman Charlton Townsend over the construction of California's first freeway. Meanwhile, Dr. Peter Kraft, the head of the German-American Bund, meets Elsa, a mysterious mother of one of his patients. Sensing danger, Tiago's mother Maria pleads with Santa Muerte to protect her family as the rising tensions in the city of LA threaten to explode.
And explode they do in a wonderful closing sequence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Episode. Oh, just if you wanted to see how a show can build and build and build, I think this is done so well towards the end of the show. It really shows you the power of Magda, which kind of leads us on to how we're going to talk about this first episode. If you've been following along with our Penny Dreadful retrospective, what we've been doing is picking out a big moment for each of us to discuss and kind of bring to the table as we all discuss through our thoughts on it, I suppose. This time, because it's the first episode and because Natalie Dormer plays 3 characters in the show, well, thought it might be good to pick her 3 characters, right? And talk through that way. Because she's so influential in everything else that goes around her. Natalie Dormer plays the character of Magda. In case you haven't seen her on Game of Thrones and don't recognize her face, she does play this major character and many roles throughout the show. So, John, you're going to kick us off with the first character?
Yes, absolutely. I'm taking Magda as Councilman Townsend's advisor, the spectacled lady Alex. I think this is really interesting. You know, we have that great opening moment in the field of crops with the young Santiago and his papa, and this idea that all you need to do is whisper. She will let these people, let the people of the earth be who they are by whispering to them. Mm-hmm. And what a better way of capturing that by this political advisor that is shaping the direction not only of Townsend in his role on this transport committee, but also just officialdom, you know, the mayor's council. It's a really interesting sort of position to be in. And I think this is probably, although she is supernatural, obviously, because she can take on different forms, mm-hmm. it's the least supernatural element of it. Purebred Magda is absolutely supernatural. Mm-hmm. And certainly we see things from Elsa that is certainly not of this world. But here, Magda as Alex is playing it really quite straight. And it's the one maybe most relatable, this idea of the political advisor, you know, the Pompeo in the White House or whoever it may be.
I've met a few of them over my years.
And it's just, I mean, it's in this kind of setting that Alex is advancing, you know, these 2 of these 3 prophecies that I mentioned straight off the bat as we started the discussion. This idea of, you know, there will come a time where it will be nation against nation and race against race, you know, through both her trying to sort of mesh in Councillor Townsend in with the German CEO and that kind of underground infiltration of Nazi businessmen, or even just the espionage in the US at that time in 1938. But also then the idea of, you know, what this new freeway represents, and the Transport Committee in trying to sort of block and undermine any community response to it. And again, something that people maybe understand a lot about, whether it's oil pipelines or new dams or fracking or that kind of thing, kind of mobilizing the official response or the slog of officialdom to get what they want, and in effect striking through people's communities. So I thought this was really interesting.
Absolutely. It's one of the best scenes as well in the episode, having Raul stand up with his group of people who live in the area, the community who are going to be most affected by this, and standing up to this commissioner in the committee office. I think it's so interesting to see I think as she mentioned, the spark, the fire that's going on between these two groups of people and the back and forth between the two of them. And then there's that underlying hint of racism that's going on with how he's talking about them when he's walking away with Alex. Councilman Townsend is saying some completely incendiary type of phrases, and Alex is saying to him, basically, I agree with you, but just don't use that language because it might make it in the papers, and then there might be a problem getting you into the mayorhood. So just make sure you keep those phrases silent and to yourself. But you're right, kind of thing, to keep kind of bolstering his own belief in himself. You know, there's a great throwaway line that she does to him later on where he says, I'm very far away from the mayor's office. And she goes, not as far away as you think. You know, another little push in the right direction to make sure that he knows that that's where she's pushing him to. And if she just sticks by his side and he sticks by hers, then he'll definitely have that mayor job that he's been wanting for so long. You know, I just love that kind of niggling that she does to push him in the direction she wants him to go.
That's it, isn't it? It's that keeping those ideas out of the press like she's trying to, but also at the same time keeping his profile up in the public eye, through keeping the Transport Committee going. But I think the interesting thing here as well about Alex is that, again, that opening kind of chat between the two sisters, Magda says, let them be who they are. All you need to do is whisper to them. Mankind just needs to be told you can. It's in the sense that she's saying that his inherent racism as well. You know, he's talking about, well, what are we destroying? Just a few Mexican bars, a laundrette, you know, total disregard for the community. We see it with Captain Vanderhoff as well, where he says, I wish those 4 bodies down in the river were Mexican and not from Beverly Hills, you know, rich, important white people. And it's kind of that Alex is saying, you can do this. She's not making him racist. He already is, and he's using that in a way in his position to provide this structural splinter between the community. Because when asked, well, where can we go? Because there's no help, he goes, in that fantastic scene between him and Raul, where it really, you know, the tensions of this new freeway construction are really there to be seen. He goes, Raul goes, where should we go? And he goes, well, I know where you could go home. And Raul has to reiterate that, well, I was born in the same hospital in LA that you were.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, this whole thread is going to get super interesting. You mentioned the underlying racism, and it's just underwater. It's like literally, it boils to the top a few times with Councilman Townsend, and I think they'll use that in a way, which is going to be interesting. For Alex, I found one thing really, really interesting, which is they've styled Natalie Dormer in such a way, because she is aesthetically quite beautiful. Yeah. Her other 2 characters are quite stunning. They've styled her as a frumpy secretary.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a weird one. Why are they actually actively giving her weird hair and grey and making her, not even trying to just like age her, trying to actively kind of make her look plain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I know why, because what we're going to see is probably Councilman Townsend is a womanizer, and Alex couldn't whisper and embolden him, and he probably wouldn't listen to a very good looking woman. So we're going to see these very sexist elements probably come into play as well, which were back in those days as well an issue as much as race.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm going to see how that goes from a this is where I'm going to get myself in even more trouble. So I've always personally sided with corporations when it's like, for like the advancement of humanity and progress, there needs to, sometimes you can't stand in the way of that.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
So historically, like they had to move these towns. Now, probably what we're going to find here is that they're just saying, go back. He actually says, go back to Mexico. Mm-hmm. You're not going to find you another home.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm like, step too far. But the rate, in terms of, we need to build a new motorway and your house is in the way, so let's just move you somewhere better. I'm like, all right, I can get on board with that. It's just where it gets very, that courtroom scene was just interesting.
Yeah.
And even the banging, the way they,
yeah.
It was not singing, chanting, I suppose is a good way of kind of saying it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They're stoking up the revolution effectively.
Yes.
That's what they're doing when they're getting together and trying to face down someone that's not listening to them in Councilman Townsend, you know. It is fascinating. I've been reading a lot of articles and a lot of pieces from John Logan about why he chose this as the story. And it is interesting, you know, this concept that he came up with, particularly at that time in 1938, about building these roads in LA through particular neighborhoods. That's where the concept's actually coming from. It's the neighborhoods that were chosen to put the motorways through, rather than your house is in the way of a motorway. It's, we've chosen your house as the house that's going to be flattened while we put a motorway in. And that continually happened throughout LA. He talked about this concept where over decades, what was happening where more and more immigrant communities were being segregated from good, well-to-do areas by building motorways and blocking them on the wrong side of the tracks, effectively. So this is the kind of start of that. This is where this is kicking off in this particular era of America to segregate communities of immigrants from white Americans, effectively, because the white Americans were the ones that were in power. And of course, you're not going to knock down an 18-hole golf course and 5 mansions to build a motorway. You're going to knock down the immigrant communities who've only been there for 20 or 30 years, not the families that have been there for 80 years, is the idea that he's playing on here.
Yeah, you hear that slightly further where Alex talks about building another motorway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they bring up, I'm using their terms, it will go through the coloured areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he goes, we're not ready for that yet.
Yeah.
And she goes, but we could be.
Exactly. So it's another word in the ear from Alex to a person that's racist anyway, and probably will have these plans. But exactly as you say, John, she's not pushing him in a direction he wouldn't go, but she's giving him guidance for the way that will disrupt most, I suppose.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing. Belvedere Heights, where the community is, it's, as Raul says, it's when progress becomes barbaric.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that kind of, isolating communities, away from services or whatever. Most of them wouldn't have had a car, so it won't benefit them, like, say, a tramway, all this kind of stuff. It's obviously cheaper for, the city to, uproot effectively small scale cheap housing compared to a golf course who's got many rich members and all this kind of thing. So, you know, it all plays along those lines, I think, and just the slog of officialdom that puts up the barriers, makes people feel ineffective or not heard. I think is the big thing here. I think it is one moment though, just before all of this, when Tiago has that celebration of becoming a detective in the LAPD, and him and his mum, Maria, are walking to the bus stop where he goes to get back into town. And there's a moment, it's a great little image where she looks at all the machinery there ready for the big Monday morning dig.
Yeah.
And they look menacing, or, it's portrayed as monsters in the dark, these mechanical monsters in the dark. And I think it's another thing that relates to the original Penny Dreadful series, this idea of progress and how it impacts people lives in different ways, or in the sense of, like with Victor Frankenstein, gets abused. So it's being abused here by Councillor Townsend to advance his own embedded racial thinking or notions of racial purity or not, depending on your race. And so it's a really interesting thing. I think on the flip side of this, then there's those explicit prejudices like Mr. Goss, the representative of the German company who is there in the US. It's a great line. We've been working on the Reich Chancellery and the Autobahns. We can build you more freeways because, as the Germans were absolutely ahead of the game in building their Autobahn network. Yeah. And, but here it's that explicit prejudice of Mr. Goss representing a Nazi party member probably, and certainly the Gestapo aide or henchman assigned to him in Kurt. And I love that they effectively, again, play to his own ego by saying, we want you to be the next mayor of LA. We can see that we can support you through to that. We have things in common in a sense, and you can advance our agenda. But it comes with a threat because, despite all his flaws, Councilman Townsend believes he is a patriot. Yeah. But at the same time, he doesn't want a bullet in the head. It's a great line where Mr. Goss just kind of leans in and he says, see, the man by the car, he's Gestapo. If he doesn't think that this exchange has gone well, he will put a bullet in your head. I suggest you shake my hands after our conversation. And I think this is really, it's a great little moment. Yeah. Because in this as well, Alex is pretty much quiet. She has set up this meeting and she's not really leading that conversation because in a sense, in this kind of realm of race against race or even nation against nation, she's kind of aligned pretty much with Nazism and Hitlerism. And I think, that racial purity philosophy of the Nazi agenda, but also the Hitlerism, the cult of an individual to lead all of that. I thought it was really interesting that infiltration and espionage in the US in the lead up to the war in 1939, even though the US didn't come in till, another sort of 3 to 4 years later. It gave me hints of, The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick, but before the Nazis, before that alternative history of the Nazis actually occupying a great swaths of the eastern side of America, but that this, they were trying to make the US sympathetic to their cause so that they wouldn't intervene in the same way that the British were trying to kind of make sure that the US were sympathetic to their position. Yeah. So, all this kind of toing and froing and conflicting agendas at this sort of big scale, I thought was really good. It's almost like another prong to the infiltration through the grassroots approach that we see with Dr. Kraft. This is the subversive espionage route, infiltration, but to get, people in key top-down positions to kind of be sympathetic to the Nazi regime.
And it's not much that she has to do here as well. She just has to put the two right people who have the same beliefs even though they may not know it, all she has to do is get a meeting between the two of them, and then everything will go Alex's way here. You know, it's a really scary proposition that's all it can take is just a couple of words in the ear of the right person, and maybe you have Nazi America, basically.
Yeah, and to advance that far right agenda in the US as well, so that the US ultimately becomes aligned with the Axis power of Germany and Italy.
Absolutely. And this is also something from history. This isn't something that was pulled out of John Logan's head. This idea that Hitler was looking to set up a base in LA and felt that LA would be a good breeding ground for the Nazi party and their ideals was actually true. It was a very pivotal moment in the history of the Nazis' expansion into America, their idea that that's where they wanted to go. And as John mentioned, it did lead to the concept of Man in the High Castle. So that's where that all came from. So, interesting that they're visiting it here. Chris, let's go on to your, Natalie Dormer from the episode, because there's a connection there, isn't there?
Sure. From one Nazi to another. Mm-hmm. Let's move it on. I'm going to be taking Elsa. Elsa, the German visitor to Dr. Kraft. Now, you're probably going, Elsa? She's not actually called Elsa in the episode. She is later, or will be named Elsa, but we know through through promotional materials that she is going to be Elsa.
Yes.
But this whole storyline is started via Dr. Kraft. We're introduced to Dr. Kraft at his kitchen table, or in his kitchen, with his two sons, who are lovingly discussing Green Hornet versus another character, and the rain and the snow and how they've never seen snow.
They're doing some nerdy podcast commentary on some radio shows that are going on, you know?
Yeah. To be fair, they were doing the podcast before the podcast began. They're basically doing what we're doing now. Because, we've never seen Nazis. So how do we know? We need to go to see Nazis. No. But seriously, we get to see them discuss, and it's very interesting. They are very American kids. They are prim and proper, very American children. They are the first generation German Americans. Obviously after coming over probably from World War I. What we then get is introduced to Dr. Kraft's wife, who buzzes in and buzzes out.
Yeah.
We do get Mrs. Vega. That's how there's a straightaway connection with the Vegas, in that she is their maid, or not live-in maid. So we see her arrive in the morning. So I'm going to say maid / house cleaner / potentially cook, kind of overall just help.
Yeah. And the person that's going to make sure that someone doesn't have an alcoholic drink during the day.
And I'm wondering how that's going to play out, because that's framed. That's not just a castaway line. That was framed very particularly. So I can see an Elsa doing whispers around that.
Right.
So if we're talking about how is the whispers into humanity going to affect these different things, there's a couple of ways, and one of them I can see being is the Mrs. Kraft and her susceptibility to tipple.
Yes.
But it's a nice introduction to this family. It kind of gives you all the points you need. It gets funnier when we do see Kraft in his car, listening to the first ever Rosetta Stone, who could even be Babel. But he has this little tape recorder talking about bridge and the children going to bed at night.
I absolutely love this. I think it's so interesting because Rory Kinnear is an actor that we obviously saw for 3 seasons of the original Penny Dreadful, and he's back now playing a completely different role in this show. He is British, not American, so I was kind of expecting this show set in City of Angels, it's set in LA. We're going to get to hear Rory Kinnear's American accent. But no, we have a German with an accent that's slightly off from German because he's trying to speak American through these tapes. That was a really interesting little touch.
Definitely.
It also makes sure that as an actor, and he's not, because he's a fantastic actor, genuinely one of my favorite actors out there, but it makes sure that he's beyond reproach if he does get that accent slightly wrong, because he can say, well, actually, I'm doing two different accents at the same time, American and German, so I'm not exactly American, I'm not exactly German.
But it must be really, really difficult, because, you know, it's kind of that you can, I think certainly for English speakers, to some extent, a German speaking English, you can approximate quite nicely. I mean, in the sense of, you know, with the V's and W's at least, and that kind of intonation. But here, he's actually, if it's too obviously that, then it looks like he's not learning the English or trying to integrate it. And so it must be so tough to try and just soften it all, and not to revert to that Indiana Jones kind of, you know, evil Nazi kind of accent, which, you know.
What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I have no clue.
I'm glad it's set in 1938 when there was no World Wide Web, because he could be saying, you know, that several times in terms of his babble or his Rosetta Stone learning. So yeah, but I thought it was really kind of nicely pitched the way he was doing it, for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree.
The one thing I will say is the choice of accents. Obviously, they must have had dialect coach, because I was expecting, as all the additional German characters were entered the fray, the part of me was fearful. Some of our UK listeners may remember a show called Allo. Definitely my podcast host
We
will.
certainly do. Yeah.
And it was set in France, and there was some German. It was a comedy on BBC back in the 70s,
Late 80s.
late 80s. Okay, there you go.
Although it did go on something like 7 years longer than the actual war, so it went on for about 12 years. So
yeah. It had some amazing German accents, very over the top German accents, and part of me was in there going, "Oh no!" For every good accent in here, there's potential for another bad one to come in. So I was expecting them to come in, you know, like this, yeah. Like, well, get to the chopper quickly. I was like,
That's
Austrian German. I was just going like, oh, this is gonna go bad. So far, I'm very happy with it.
Excellent.
The accents, spot on. Someone who works with Germans a lot in work, personal life. The German speaking English, they've got it on point. But anyway, enter Elsa, or should I say no name, Mrs. Something. I didn't catch it because we didn't have subtitles. So we will find that out in the next episode, actually give her Elsa her last name. But, her poor little, weird Adolf is, on the table with some, asthma, you know. He gets whipped a lot by his father, and yeah, it's sehr bad. Not sehr good.
Oh, Chris, we need to stop you doing that.
Yeah, there you go. But no, so we get this very weird scene where it is the child, and we can start getting the story where, like the child has been attacked by the father who's an American, and then we do see Dr. Kraft kind of probing, and then it kind of comes out that Elsa is kind of also being abused, and she was like, oh, I wish I had have met you before all this, because she is from Ich bin ein Berliner. So we do find that her character is from Berlin, he's from Essen, and it's this it's supposed to be, you can see where they're probably gonna go, which is some form of kind of adultery is caused, etc., through whispers there.
She certainly knows how to play Dr. Kraft. There's definitely moments of sexual tension between the two of them that she's certainly driving by her movements. You see when he gives her the handkerchief and she mops her eyes and offers it back to him, you know, and he says, no, keep it, it's a gift. And there's that moment where she plays into that idea as well. And of course, having the story of a husband at home that's treating her badly makes her massively sympathetic. I absolutely love her description of he's just an American like all the rest of them, you know, eating his hamburgers, drinking his beer, watching his football, but not thinking about anything. Just like, I can imagine how badly that went down with an American audience.
Well,
watching
exactly.
This show, you know?
I think as well, it's, you know, Elsa, again, that whispering, this whisper is, it's, look, I'm like you, because I think, Dr. Kraft, his wife is American. She didn't seem to have an accent. It's like, you know, it almost is the opposite of Elsa. It's that she's at home. She tends towards hitting the drink because she's got nothing else to do. It almost felt like that Marge Simpson, sat at the kitchen table, sort of just looking at the bottle of wine. Everything's clean. Everything's done, because in this case, they've got a maid, in Maria Vega, but it's like he doesn't know if he fully connects with his own wife on the basis of a cultural difference, I suppose, or being an immigrant. Now, a successful one, being a doctor and bringing his practice over to the US. But that's how I like the way that, you know, Magda in the form of Elsa here is connecting in by saying, in a sense, I'm exactly the same. Yeah. But it's with my husband. He doesn't understand the old world. And I think you see that with Peter later, where even though he's obviously trying to naturalize to be an American, he talks in the park about the Frankfurter and sauerkraut. There's still this nostalgia to the old world, or his, you know, where he's come from, and this idea of having a community. I mean, we've just come back from Switzerland, and there's kind of an idea of that, you know, the community that you try and form, but also maybe don't have so much whilst you're over there.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think it's, again, she is just whispering to them. And yeah, it may lead ultimately to some kind of romance that I presume it would go really badly, considering what happens in the elevator.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that. Perfect segue. So I feel, John, just finish your glass of water there. I feel we need to warm up our vocal cords for the rendition of a modern classic. It was first coined by women who liked the Spice, but when they were quite young, previously known as Spice Girls. But yes, so I think the song is To Become One.
I think it is. Yeah. It was just like, I was not expecting that. I mean,
it's so good.
In a sense, I don't know what you were thinking, Chris, but I actually thought this was a child, and that she'd kind of, you know, infiltrated, got this family. So obviously her husband doesn't really exist in that sense, but if he needs to, I presume part of her will form, you know, her husband. But it was just, I thought something even weirder potentially was going to happen between Elsa and her son, to be honest. And then, yeah, seeing sort of...
I don't think I want to know what that was, John.
No, I don't really know if I'm comfortable in saying it, but just because she lifted up her top, I was like, oh, okay,
no,
it's kind of that situation. But
that's how it is in their family.
Yeah, exactly. It was, I suppose I just was like, it's literally the biological version of Terminator 2.
Oh,
it's
right,
like she can separate out and then morph back together. So that was phenomenally good. And really to the kind of horror sort of thread of Penny Dreadful, which I really, really liked. I mean, much like the four bodies by the river as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I just loved how the eyes of this child just drop to the floor, kind of thing. He just goes stony faced and then just merges back in with her body, just like he's melting into it. I think it's such a fantastic special effect, but not just that, but the layering of the acting of the two characters as it's happening is just kind of, it's so interesting because the character almost falls out of the kid completely. You know, there's nothing there. It looks like an empty vessel before he merges back in with Elsa. I think it's a really well done piece.
And I like that this is another aspect of her powers. I don't know what her supernatural powers or godlike powers that we see here, that she can, because we're introduced that this is she's morphed herself again. She's no longer Magda. she is this now Elsa, and that we can see that she can take on different appearances.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, she can whisper. Beyond that, she can split. She potentially can be two places at once. She can split herself up. So yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where else they go. Moving very quickly on, because we just John, you briefly touched on the sauerkraut and the Frankfurters in the park. That wasn't the only shock. That scene where he opens the door and it was just all the Nazi paraphernalia. I was like, oh, what? Oh, hold on. Wait, I had to do mental math in my head going, wait, had the war started? Yes, the war started. Okay, wait, hold on. But they haven't fully said, so, okay, being a Nazi is not a bad thing at this point in time. It's just a weird thing. Yeah, okay. And then seeing this regiment of Nazis walk through the park in downtown LA for his lunch break. Yeah. And you get to see Dr. Kraft give this eloquent, and it was eloquent, speech, rhetoric of like, stay in your lane, US neighbors, like, protect your neighborhood, protect, no need to go to war and fight for the English or anything like that. And we must protect the fellow Americans, and I am a fellow American like you. It was very powerful, very well done.
Leave the Europeans to their European things. We're American kind of idea.
Yeah, exactly.
It is definitely another probably quite incendiary commentary on current day events, really, as well. That's the purpose of this whole concept, really. But fascinating to see this speech in the middle of the park. He's eloquent and he's interesting and intriguing to people. Again, as Chris pointed out, 1938, before the war, before a lot of stories of what was going on in Germany would have gotten over to America. So while people think of him as a bit of a curiosity, some guy standing in a park shouting out loud and getting their attention, he also uses little tricks to get them to laugh and get them to find what he's saying interesting. Americans wouldn't be where they are without our Frankfurters and our sauerkraut. I see you over there eating the sauerkraut kind of thing. Everybody's kind of laughing. Everybody's having a bit of fun, and he's getting his message across. This idea of stick with us, we'll stick together, and we'll keep America great. Because I think he actually says that exact line. So
he does.
Yeah,
he does. Yeah. I mean, he's part of this German-American Bund, which is this organization, pro-Nazi organization that established in the 1930s. And it took over from another organization. And so, again, this infiltration. I think as well what's really good as well is you see Louis Michner and Tiago Vega watching Dr. Kraft giving his speech, and with kind of equal parts discussed really from the two of them. Obviously, again, this idea of stirring the racial pot for both of them, because on the one hand you have Tiago, who is Mexican, but I think the assumption is that Louis Michner is Jewish. And I think, you see him later on, obviously doing a private investigation of some description into Mr. Goss, the CEO, and also other different strands of things like the German-American Bund, as well as other fascist infiltration into Germany.
Definitely flashbacks to Hunters, the Netflix show or the Amazon Prime show that we watched earlier on this year about Nazi hunters in America in the 70s, where you see all the ties and connections and how they're all infiltrating everything that's going on. But this being in the 30s, you're kind of going, they're already infiltrating quite deep. Yeah. Which I thought was a really, really interesting touch.
And I think it was another little touch as well that Elsa does as well when she's in Dr. Kraft's office, because she does talk about being forced to live in the Jewish quarter with her husband, that it's difficult.
That's right. Yeah.
Again, yet at the same time, really indicating that she is of pure German thoroughbred, in the way that the Nazis would have done. So, yeah, I think this is really good, actually, that you have them seeing that, because it opens just another little thread for Louis Michner, doing his own private investigation, but as well, it echoes why they would be partners, even though you have that great line at the start as they become new partners, on the first day, where Tiago asks him, well, why did you pick me? Mm-hmm. And of course his response is, well, I didn't. No one else would have you. Yeah. So I'm left with you, the Mexican. But for Tiago, it felt like it was the wrong answer that came from, Michner, here, because I think it's the idea that, the Jewish population also would have been, at the whipping end of this sort of racial stirring as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You feel like another outcast, someone similar to himself. Yeah.
So I think that kind of wraps up Elsa, right now, because it would be interesting to see where her little weird Adolf clone, her arm, I don't know where he comes, but I'm interested to see, because the one thing I'm trying to look at across all of this is nation versus nation, brother versus brother. I'm trying to figure out each time the nation versus nation and brother versus brother can also be family versus family. Mm-hmm. So in this case, it's the Nazism, but also Dr. Kraft's family going to be at odds and broken.
Yeah.
So that could be where we're going to start to see things. Yeah. A different take on what is going on and how it will happen.
Absolutely.
But there is a third version of Natalie Dormer in this show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And probably the one that we've seen most often, in the promotional material and everything else, because they certainly were trying to get across this show as a Penny Dreadful. The idea of Magda being a supernatural being was very important. So, that's my version of Natalie Dormer that we're probably going to chat about a bit. You guys have mentioned a fair bit of it, and it's impossible in a show like this because it is all interconnected. It's impossible to not talk about everything, in each other's points, really. So it's grand. We cross over often. It's fine. But I love the initial challenge between Magda and Santa Muerte. I think it's really an interesting challenge. We played the clip at the opening of the show. This concept that Magda is effectively going out to sow the seeds of the demise of man, and Santa Muerte will be there with her all the way through, because Santa Muerte cares for the souls of humans, not for the living, which I think is an interesting kind of distinction that she makes. But Magda does give a little push towards her as well, gives her, will you step in to save the living? And why do you care individually about this kid, Tiago? Why do you care about any of them? They're just beings that live on this plane, which is ours to control effectively. So I'm really intrigued in the idea of these two characters, Magda versus Santa Muerte. They're supposed to be sisters, and similar to the original Penny Dreadful with Dracula and Lucifer being brothers, and the two of them with their own plans to take over the world. It seems that Magda has this plan to take over the world, and Santa Muerte will be there at the end because she's the one that guides all the souls of the living off into the afterlife. But they're not working together to destroy the world. It doesn't seem like Santa Muerte is particularly evil in the way that Magda is. Magda has this belief that everybody in the human race is destined to do something bad and do something evil, and she'll lead them that way. Santa Muerte is just kind of there for the afterlife. She's not there to judge them while they go along it, and she's not there to save them either, or to step in and push them in a good direction or a bad direction. This isn't good versus evil. This is two sisters that have a different purpose, effectively. So I'm really intrigued about those two characters, and this is much more central to the show than I actually thought it was going to be, because you saw a little bit of Magda in the trailer. I thought it was shown right at the start of the episode, and then not too much more. I didn't expect in the first episode to get all of these versions of Magda to be pushing everybody in different directions. She's behind everybody's back. She's whispering in the ear of the councilman who stands up against Raul Vega, as John mentioned. She's in the ear of Dr. Kraft, who's stoking the flames of America's first. And then towards the end, she's in the police officer who fires the first shot, and then also in Raul, who escalates the whole battle amongst the community. And then that pushes him to try and kill Louis Michner, and that gets him shot by his own brother. So she's in everybody's ears, and you're trying to work out, what's the plan for her? Well, the plan for her is the desolation of the world. She doesn't want any side to win. She doesn't want the Nazis to take control of America. She doesn't want the councilman to become mayor. She doesn't want anything like that to happen. She wants everything to burn and her walk in the ashes of the world, and she will be in anybody's ear that she needs to be in to accomplish that, which I think is fascinating. I think it's a really good evil villain for the show.
Definitely.
But is she the villain? That's the question I have. Because, so with the original Penny Dreadful, and I from what I remember, is not all of the characters, or the monsters are monsters.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's kind of, so, Santa Muerte is a known mythological figure. It is, she is, well, a known, I had heard of her before.
Yeah.
Magda, I haven't. So I'm wondering whether this is a creation. Is this going to be something that will be, they'll go, surprise, she was really X all along. Or it's going to be that Santa Muerte and Magda are not villains. We think they're villains from this opening episode, but by the end, they're yin and yang. They're creation. They're necessary evils.
I think so. I think they're like facilitators, for want of a better word. Yeah. And I think it's down to the whispering. It's that I will let them be who they are. Mankind just needs to be told you can. So she's not telling Councilman Townsend to do the stuff he does. It's just he is. He has racial prejudice in him. Yeah. She's not telling the Nazis to do it because that's their philosophy. The anger with Raul and his brother is because, well, they're both from the same community. Their house is going to be destroyed, but one is lining up on one side of that picket line, for want of another word, and one on the other, with ultimately that shotgun. And with, I suppose, I'm suspecting with Dr. Kraft, it's the idea that in one way he can't lose go of his homeland of Germany, and he sees nostalgia and belonging in what's coming out of there, and in the same way that Louis Michner can't either from his religion, from being Jewish. And so I think it's that she will let them be who they are and will facilitate them to do that to the extremes in order, what does she say at the start, so that dark powers come into alignment and the world will burn. Yeah. And I think for Santa Muerte, it's that she facilitates people from death and other ways. If someone asks for protection, so she facilitates it, but she doesn't intervene in the same way. So you have that. I mean, it's an amazing scene. I think it's a really great scene where Maria is praying in front of all the crosses, to calling forth Santa Muerte at sort of the behest of her son because of those murders in the river. And she comes to her, why did you call me? I'll be here when you die and not before. If you die, I will be there. But if your leg is caught in a trap, you must bite your own leg off. Yeah. It's really, really good. Everything's repeated here in this scene from the earlier scene right at the start between the two sisters in the field. The whole prophecy is repeated. She kind of goes, I have no heart to care for man, don't give me tasks to do. Yeah. But I think that's the interesting thing then with Tiago, because he has been touched by her. And is it that she's facilitating him to be, the opposition to Magda in the physical world because she can't quite do it. He's almost like the chosen one in that sense. Yeah. Because I love, Santa Muerte gives out to Maria and is about to go, and Maria just keeps on praying to her, saying, you're needed here now. It's fantastic stuff. It's real Shakespearean, I thought. Yeah. And Maria just calls out, it's my favorite line of the episode, will you sleep as your bitch of a sister conquers heaven? It is, it's like, they are the yin and yang. I completely agree with you. And I think they facilitate, but it's that new world, Catholic religious tradition that it's coming from Mexico. And it, and then you get the hiss, like the cat hiss back from the Santa Muerte, and then she disappears. Yeah. you know, and her mum's like, it's up to Santiago Vegas, effectively, you know, the thing clicks. It's like, you're the one to stop it.
Yeah.
You're the one that's been touched. She's given you the almost like the stigmata in that sense.
The scar, yeah, absolutely.
But I thought, like, I think that's what they are. They're facilitators, but it's that, you know, in any given time, they could be viewed as good or evil. And from any given vantage point, that it's good or bad. It's whatever you think of it in that sense. So it's a little fluid, definitely.
Mm-hmm. I like the greyness of that. Yeah, it's really, always really good in this show.
Yeah, but
definitely.
That was such a great,
or should I say, always really good in John Logan's writing, because this is a brand new show and this is the first episode of it. So not necessarily. Magda is created for this show. Santa Muerte is a deity in kind of the mix of folklore and Catholic religion that came about when the Catholic religion was brought by immigrants from Mexico to America.
Conquistadors.
Absolutely. When they brought along some of their more folklore traditions and merged them in to Catholic beliefs, much to the hatred of a lot of Catholics at the time. They were trying to outlaw the worship of Santa Muerte. Reading loads about that over the last couple of months, and it's some fascinating history of the character of Santa Muerte and how she's been used and how she's been transformed and turned into a figure by a lot of institutions trying to convert this into something subversive. The idea of Santa Muerte, they have regularly said this is the deity of drug dealers and gang leaders because they've found some imagery of Santa Muerte in their homes. So this is something trying to subvert the Latinos that are in America.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, it's well, like, I think as well with Tiago investigating the 4 bodies in the river of the Hazlitt family, and he, you know, they're wondering why they've been brought on this. Obviously, then and he says that the makeup is Day of the Dead, and he references then Santa Muerte and describes her as a bruja or witch and is the goddess of death. And again, it's very similar with Penny Dreadful, this idea of the scorpion and who Vanessa was, and even with Tiago, you know, there are similarities there, that he is a vessel for extra natural, supernatural forces, like in the same way that Vanessa Ives was. It's just maybe he's less aware of it than Vanessa was when we're first introduced, or just because of the generational thing, which I think is another thing that's brought out. You know, he just views it as peasant folklore. I mean, that's what he's describing it to his colleagues in the LAPD. But obviously, maybe he's a little more reverent around his mum, Maria.
Well, I actually have it in my notes, the same kind of question, I suppose, because in the original Penny Dreadful, Vanessa Ives became obsessed almost with her belief in God and her belief in Christianity. In this show, Tiago's meeting and being touched by the supernatural completely pushes him away from religion, or at least from those supernatural beliefs and those folkloric beliefs that his mom has. He seems to be completely separating himself from all of that, even though he knows it exists. And it had me questioning, is that what's happening? The other kind of read that I have, and maybe it's something that may come out in the next episode or as the series goes on, the other kind of read on it is he saw his father burned to death. We noticed in this episode, Magda can't be seen by anybody when she's in her form and talking to other humans. Magda's the one that set the fire that killed everybody that was in that field around Tiago. Well, Tiago did see his father in the arms of Santa Muerte. Maybe he blamed Santa Muerte for the death of everybody in that field because he didn't see Magda start the fire. Maybe he believes that it was Santa Muerte. So maybe that's the reason why he turned his back on everything. It's not that he has no belief in religion or doesn't believe the supernatural exists. It's that he blames the supernatural for the death of his father.
But Maria even says, this angel you don't believe in, you may need her one day. Yeah. You know, it's like, he's turned away from the faith, like, you know, many people have done. So in that sense, it's really, it is a really good intergenerational kind of thing here. But I like as well that he does go back to his mother, who is the oracle of all things Santa Muerte, to keep her ear to the ground. And ultimately her ear to the ground is praying to her own shrine, to the deity that she believes in.
Absolutely. It's like a two-way communication to God, you know?
One thing I will, just from the ending before we kind of close and move into our notes for this episode. Do you think because of the mark, he will be able to see Magda? Because I have a feeling perhaps he may be able to see her, and in the next episode he may ask his brother what that lady said to him.
Maybe.
What lady?
I was wondering.
And that mark might give him, if he is going to be the personification of Santa Muerte on Earth, in that she is asleep, she doesn't care, she doesn't want to care, but she's given her charge this power,
like the vessel or the weapon of her on Earth. Yeah, I was wondering, but then there is that moment at the beginning, I suppose, of that whole kick-off scene, as Magda's choosing the first person she's going to whisper in the ear of, and she's going under the noses of every single police officer right in front of Tiago, and he doesn't see her.
Oh yeah.
She just follows on along that line and then goes to the youngest trigger-happy police officer who's trigger fingers looking very itchy until she speaks into his ear. Then he fires the shot. So okay. I don't think he saw her there, but that doesn't mean that later on in the series he may not be, or he may be imbued with that, or given that as some kind of ability from Santa Muerte if she does step in. But I feel like she is completely invisible in her machinations as Magda. In all of the other forms, she's seen by everybody around, but as Magda, I think she's invisible. So nobody knows why they did what they did.
We all know when you're in latex walking down the street, everyone just avoids you and acts like you're not there.
I'm sure there's quite a few people that wouldn't avoid Natalie Dormer in that latex.
I would say that must have been roasting for her. But I know what you mean. I did feel like he might be able to see her, but I think you're right. I don't think he does in the end. But again, that final scene with the face off, and of course, like, what a great little cliffhanger, because it has Santiago just killed his brother. This is the brother versus brother. His younger brother as well has seen him at least shoot his brother. And his
entire community has just seen him effectively leave the community, join the LA police force, which some of them weren't very happy with anyway, and then shoot his own brother on behalf of the force that was stopping them from protecting their home. So if Raul is dead, that's a huge incendiary moment for that community and everything that's going on with Tiago. So I'm saying cliffhanger right now. Definitely, I'm not saying he's dead until we see a body.
No.
And in the world of Penny Dreadful, seeing a body also doesn't necessarily mean death.
Well, and we have that moment as well before kind of really being told by his mother that he needs to do his job. He needs to be there, is what she says. Really, you're going to be there for a purpose. Yet he has been, was trying to get out of it by taking the day off, by going to Michner and asking. And Michner says, either you're a cowboy or an Indian. You have to choose which side. And it's like, what? Like, I couldn't imagine that of being able to choose like that. It must be really difficult. It's the classic moment where people who sort of in 1980s Britain, there were members of the family who may have been in the police and the others were miners striking and being charged down by them. And it's the same kind of thing. Here, betrayal versus fighting for their community. How is it perceived? How is it viewed? And it's interesting that his mom, with that prayer to Santa Muerte, believes that he has to be there for some reason, whatever that may be.
Yeah, absolutely. I do also like from Michner that he kind of goes, this is your second day in the job and you're already telling me this is something you can't do. But he doesn't end it with, the thing you can't do is go up against your entire community that got you to this point, because that is quite a big decision. Like, maybe if this was 6 months into the job and he may have made some other relationships and friendships with the people in the unit that he worked in, maybe it might feel a little difficult for him to say no and not going to work. But if it's day 2 and you're being sent off to stand on a picket line against your friends and family, it might be that's a very difficult choice.
Yeah, they didn't really highlight that as much. I think it will come out more later. Mm-hmm. But he is the first Spanish American, Latino American detective on the force in LA ever. So this is a big deal, and it's mentioned twice.
Yeah.
But it's more implied that we see him he reveres his badge, he sleeps beside him, opened, kind of like a loving portrait of what would it be, your wife or your girl, your best girlie by your side, except he has his badge.
It's a massive achievement.
But it's a massive achievement, yet it's the thing that puts him between a rock and a hard place, in that, with what happens in that final scene. And we get a touch of that even when they're celebrating him becoming the first Chicano detective. His brother Raul is still kind of questioning where his loyalty lies with this sort of tinderbox of the freeway about to be built, and which side will he come down on? Michner has said it as well. You're a cowboy or an Indian, and yet at the same time you've got the likes of the police officers still doing the racial stereotypes. Well, Michner, at least to some extent, stands up for Tiago to the casual racism in the locker room at the LAPD, or even were with Vanderhoff, so he's one of them and he also isn't. Yeah. He's one of the Mexican community, but by way of getting the detective badge, he's also not. He's different. There's a few degrees of separation, as seen by Raul, and that's like. It potentially makes for great storytelling, like it does in this episode, because Tiago is in this bind of being between a rock and a hard place. He's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't.
Absolutely.
And presumably, Santa Muerte likes damned souls.
And that's very true, very true. And also remember from Penny Dreadful, the concept of cowboy, you're either a cowboy or an Indian, is a very different phrase in this world, where we know exactly what happened between the cowboys and the Native Americans from what happened with Ethan in the first series of that show as well. That's it for our points about this first episode. Any notes that you want to talk about? Anything we haven't particularly discussed? I know there's loads we haven't discussed, but we don't discuss everything on our podcast. But is there anything we haven't discussed you want to talk about?
I have 2 quick points. First, in your opinion, will we see other supernatural beings? Penny Dreadful was always a bit of an Avengers coming together, of different fictional characters. From what I remember of season 1, right. You guys have done the retrospective. I've yet to catch up. But do you think we'll see other supernatural characters?
I think these 2 initially are a great central force in the background to what's going on with the humans that are involved with them, and that's kind of what you saw in the original Penny Dreadful. While there were some supernatural characters in there, and there definitely were, you're absolutely right. Most of the characters were the humans that featured in those books, and there was 4 or 5 supernatural characters that lasted throughout the seasons, but a big bad overarching each of the 3 seasons. So I'm thinking of Magda and Santa Muerte as the big bads overarching the seasons, or the slightly grey intermediate, somewhere in between good or bad, depending on your perspective, that overarched the season. I'm not sure whether we're going to get any more supernatural beings in the show, because I think you're right, John, this idea of the one lighting the match to see how the humans go and the other one there to collect the souls on the other end just feels like a really interesting concept for the show.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think there will be so much. I think I would love there to be, because I think there's a great vein of folklore coming from Mexicans, and certainly because you have that like fabulous crossover between the religion imposed in that land and the indigenous Indians and Aztecs that had their own religion. In the same way as Santa Claus and all the tales in Europe, you have this sort of crashing together of two cultures, and one taking from the other to support its own beliefs. So I don't think so. I would love there to be, but let's be optimistic and say that's for season 2 and 3.
There you go.
Yeah, true. And my final second point to note was just interesting to see where the cult will go.
Yes.
So we're very quickly introduced to a religious cult of some Christian format, that the family is connected to.
Yes.
And literally it's a kind of, it's not a blink and you'll miss it, but
because it's audio. So yeah.
Yes. Well, it's audio, but also the robes.
Yes.
And the photos for a second. So the one thing I'm going to potentially call as a potential, right, is the person who is framed as a Jesus-like figure in the painting or a picture is a blonde lady.
Yep.
It does not look like the mother.
No.
Of the family.
No,
so could this be a additional character, for Natalie Dormer? Could this be a fourth character, for Magda or some incarnation? It could be interesting. I thought this is another whisper, like the ultimate whisper. It's like, I have my own cult.
Right.
I have my own religion.
Yeah.
Or I'm whispering about God, but actually I'm pushing the men by telling them what to do. Yeah. And I'm wondering where this cult story will go. That's where I'm going with that note.
I wonder, will it intersect with the German American Bunt with Dr. Kraft at all?
Maybe.
I did like how Detective Michner, I did like the fact that he helped himself to a glass of whiskey when he came into the home. I thought that was quite a nice little touch.
It's like, well, if I've got to investigate the house for blood, I'm going to do it with a drink in hand.
Yeah, exactly. And they are, dare I say it, true believers. Where have we heard that before? As we have reviewed and discussed so many Marvel properties.
Yeah, absolutely. I do know what that is, Chris. Because it's another major character for the season. Hopefully no spoilers for anybody that didn't notice it. If you guys didn't see it, I just happened to watch the episode about 2 or 3 times over the weekend. It's about radio evangelism. This is another form of coercion within America, effectively. Radio around the country in the US became very, very popular in the 30s and 40s. So what are now televangelists, you know what they're like. They get on the radio, they have their speeches. Back then, this was suddenly opening up a new world where voices of evangelizing people were getting spread all across America. So this character is a character that is based on a very famous evangelist of the time, that suddenly her words are being spread from LA all across America and convincing people to follow her beliefs and follow her ideals in the Christian religion. So you will see her in the second episode. Sister Molly is the character's name. You'll see her in the next episode. But yeah, it's a really interesting idea to play with. Lots of interesting stuff going on in the 30s, and you can see why this concept of it being a powder keg for John Logan to strike the match to is a really good one.
But am I right? It's Magda?
No, you're not.
Oh, okay. It's even better. So it's another kind of character like the Councilman. Interesting. Okay. So Magda's maybe in the background.
Maybe.
I just assumed it was the Virgin Mary.
Well, she may think she is. She may think she has some connection or gets all of the right words to say directly from God to her radio listeners' ears. Perhaps that's the tack she's going with. But there you go.
That'll be. I'm looking forward to that now. Yeah. But those are my notes, gentlemen. What about you? Anything else you want to close up with from? I believe, Derek, you coined this the best possible way. Notes of the dead.
Yes. Not of the muertes.
Excellent stuff.
Any other notes? One that I just wanted to mention, just because Penny Dreadful was set in the UK, and the first series of the show, this series, Penny Dreadful City of Angels, being set in the US. Penny Dreadfuls were around in the US. It was much more well known in the UK, but what would be much better known in America were pulp magazines, which became particularly successful between 1920 and 1940 when paper ran out because of the war effort. So they didn't print them as much, but they were mass produced genre stories, very much crime fiction, horror stories, science fiction, all that kind of stuff that was around at the time. So similar to Penny Dreadfuls that that they just continued on. And a lot of people would say that after this era of Penny Dreadfuls and after the war, and when I suppose a bit more money came back into the economy, this is what led to comic books becoming so popular, genre stories told in a short format for the mass population. So kind of went Penny Dreadfuls, became pulp fiction, pulp magazines, and then became comic books. So that's the etymology, we'll say, of Penny Dreadful.
Yeah, no, that's a really good connection. Because we were trying to think of like gumshoe detectives and all that, and but yeah, the pulp magazine, presume pulp fiction, eventually along those kind of lines, which is really good. I think the only note I have is just with the four bodies as well. We see Detective Tiago showing that Day of the Dead makeup, but I mean, this classic sort of horrific scene of death for Penny Dreadful. So I'm glad that has continued through from the original series as well. That they do like to show their gruesome deaths.
Absolutely. And for those of you who watched the episode on YouTube, the episode was released for free on YouTube before being on Showtime, or the same time as being on Showtime streaming. For those of you that only watched on YouTube, it has a message that comes up saying it's been edited. Go to Showtime for the full version of it. The full version of it is the bodies in full view. So the gruesomeness of that did have to be protected in case somebody was walking past your screen and work while watching YouTube.
But
just so you know,
it is really like the pearls inlaid into a groove around the eyes. You've kind of got that Chelsea smile kind of grin where it looks like part of their cheeks have been cut out. And the makeup, and then the hearts are missing with that inscription of "You take our heart, we take yours." So, it's been set up at least that it's Mexicans taking revenge on the Haslets because his company was designing the freeway. He had all the plans there, yet as any good detective, Tiago says, but we don't know whether it was Mexicans that have done this, and whether there is a more nefarious thing going on in the background as well.
Absolutely. It's fascinating. You're not even looking at my notes, and that's exactly the other note I had. It just really makes me believe that it's possibly another type of manipulation that's going on within this world. What else is it that's being manipulated? Because everybody is jumping to the assumption. Everybody from the chief of police to his own partner, everybody else is making the assumption this absolutely must be because they use makeup from Day of the Dead. Well, of course, that means nobody else could use makeup. Nobody else knows about that. Well, a lot of people do as well.
Except for Max Factor.
Max Factor, they know about it from Hollywood, just down the road, So yeah, it makes me, it would be shocking right now, actually, if it turned out to be somebody else in the community. The one suspect though was Raul, right? Because he specifically talked about the fact that that the motorway going through the community takes out the heart of their community. Yeah. So him using that similar phrase, but if he's the one that's been shot and killed in this episode, well, does it make him not a suspect, or does that just solve the whole crime? Okay, it was Raul and he's dead already. Got our man. But there you go. That was all my notes as well. Anything else that you guys had for this episode, or go on to a little bit of news?
Let's go on to some news.
It should be News of the Dead.
News of the Dead would be much better. Yes, I might use that next time. So just a couple of quick news items from some of the people involved in the show. I just thought it was interesting to have it on the first episode here. There's an interview with John Logan on why he returned to Penny Dreadful now. He talked to avclub.com where he says, "The first series to me was a very closed book. We wrote the end at the end of the show. It was a beautiful story. I loved doing the show, but I never thought I'd revisit it. And then we went through a seismic change in the world in the last 5 years. And as a writer, you're either going to whisper about that or a scream about it, and I wanted to scream about it. I was struck by certain parallels to our world now and the challenges facing us, and in the 1930s America. Los Angeles history is Latino history, so the idea of exploring folk Catholic figure like Santa Muerte seemed appropriate to the world, and it seemed like a story that was very Penny Dreadfulish to me.
I'm happy that he's screaming again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's great that John Logan is screaming and writing while screaming.
He's just like, he's just on a typewriter because he doesn't use a laptop. It's just,
exactly.
Ding.
It's almost like the lockdown meme of the music teacher saying, I've written a new song to the class, and she you've got all the guitar music coming out, and then she just screams.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm glad that John Logan is able to be a little more coherent in his writing than that, or else we wouldn't get a full show like this. Natalie Dormer also was interviewed by EW.com. I just wanted to pull this out as well because obviously she's playing multiple roles in the show. It must be fascinating for her. They asked her what makes Magda more complex for you as an actor. She says, we worked out quite quickly that the iterations of Magda, Elsa, Rio, and Alex have to be lived and breathed as real people. Their backstories have to be real. With Elsa, it's very interesting to look at why so much of the German population voted for Hitler when he came into power. Why do people fundamentally seem normal start saying things really awful out loud about other people or ethnic groups? For John Logan and I together, it was finding humanity to Elsa and Alex. In certain places, perhaps you might at least empathize with why they would make certain choices. I can't play a role on two levels. It's an experience I had with Marjorie Tyrell in Game of Thrones. If she contradicts herself in one scene, you can't play that contradiction in the frame. You have to play some authority in the moment, and then the contradiction is something that happens in the audience's brain going down the line. When I play Elsa, I'm not playing Magda walking along in the faux leather dress. I have to play Elsa, who's a true, full characterization. I have to believe in those individuals as if they were real humans, and forgetting there was a puppet master like Magda above them all at all times. So she is really playing all four of those roles in the show as she's going through it. She's playing four completely different characters in her mind, which I think is evident when you're watching.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can really see the difference between each one of them. So.
And it is that there is a fourth iteration of Magda, realized as a full, person and character in the show. We just haven't seen her yet.
Exactly.
That's going to be interesting to see, and it's good to see. And I really like Natalie Dormer. I loved her as in Game of Thrones.
Me too. Yeah.
This will show her full acting chops.
Absolutely. I would say when a part like this comes across your table as an actress, it's like, I'm going right now. Don't want to stop. Let me just get there. Yeah. I will do everything to get this role, because let's see, it's only episode 1, but it's one that should absolutely raise her to the next level, really, because it's been really good in the past. In our excitement to doing a new show, we completely forgot to talk about our ratings for the episode. John, overall, what did you think of the episode?
Well, I thought this was really, really good. Really enjoyed immersing myself into this new Penny Dreadful world in Los Angeles. I would give this 4 Frankfurters and a 0.5 dollop of sauerkraut out of 5. I thought this was really good. You could see the connection to Penny Dreadful of old in terms of that supernatural element. You know, the gruesomeness, not holding back on the murders. The Santa Muerte confrontation with Maria was excellent, and I think Tiago and his brothers and his relationship with Louis Michner is really good as well. It's a fascinating time of history, involving Nazis in the US, which always strikes a certain weird tone. You think of it as being European. And so seeing those things in the US and certainly on the West Coast, it's a really intriguing aspect of American history. So I love that it's set in LA, in the Mexican community, the American Mexican community. Just so good. And of course the writing and the acting has been just great. For me, Maria Vega was just fantastically drawn, and certainly that confrontation with Santa Muerte, so good. So 4 Frankfurters and a 0.5 dollop of sauerkraut in maybe a German-American bun.
Maybe, yes. There was a spelling mistake in the Showtime description for the episode, which was saying that it was a German-American bun rather than the German-American bunt. So some problems there with maybe spell check ended that.
Exactly.
That's the ratings for this episode. Myself and Chris, I know we both enjoyed it. We did mention that we both really enjoyed the episode, but completely forgot to record our thoughts about that. So let's head on to our feedback section.
I think, gentlemen, it's time for a penny for your thoughts. So we're asking you to send in your thoughts on each episode to feedback@tvpodcastindustry.com, or you can, of course, join us over on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries, where every Sunday we will put up a spoiler post where you can drop in your thoughts and we will discuss your thoughts live on air. Well, live for us, not live for you.
Yes, we will not be dead, I promise.
You can also hear your dulcet tones interacting with our dulcet tones on the podcast by recording a clip yourself on your phone, emailing it to us at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or heading over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com, and you can record a clip of up to 90 seconds of your thoughts for us, and we'll include it on the next week's episodes. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Absolutely.
We thrive on it. Derek can't survive without it.
I know. It's great to get all the feedback. I love listening to it. So, especially when you send audio feedback. But as Chris said, you can also email us and go onto our Facebook group if you don't want to record your voice. But our first voicemail comes in from the wonderful Steve Brown.
Hey guys, this is Steve, and this is for Penny Dreadful, City of Angels. Just a few quick notes. I did watch it twice and really liked it. I'm impressed that John Logan wrote this episode also. I'm not sure how many of this season's episodes he's gonna write. I'm sure you'll tell us as we go, but definitely a different kind of tone, definitely a brighter kind of tone than, of course, it's California instead of London or the UK area, so definitely a different tone to it. How many parts is Natalie Dormer playing in this? Because I didn't realize the first time I watched it, but I think she also was playing the councilman's aide, the woman with the glasses, and I'm not sure how many parts she's actually. I guess we saw 3 in this episode. We'll see how many more. A lot of names in the credits the second time I watched it that I don't know who all they were at. Like I didn't recognize Ethan Peck. And I'm not sure. I did kind of recognize Piper Perabo the second time I watched it, and so just some really cool cameos there from actors and actresses that I didn't expect. I really thought Adam Rodriguez was going to be in the show longer, but it appears not. So we'll see. But that last scene with that fight and all the action was really, really cool, and just reminded me, as tragic as the whole thing was, it reminded me how good Natalie Dormer is at the side eye acting. Like she has this way of looking her eyes to the side that I've loved since Game of Thrones, and I always thought was really, really great. So can't wait to hear what you guys thought. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Steve. That last scene, I didn't actually expand my love for it so much. I could wax lyrical. Just the slow down, the wave, the slow wind across the two deities, where everything else it's almost a crawl. I'd love to know how long that took to shoot. Yeah. Whether the two deities are green screened, because I actually get the feeling, because everything looked like it was flowing at the same time. Right. I'm wondering if it was, okay, this reset, do that scene multiple times, and just slow it down on a camera each time. But it looked fantastic.
It really did. And without words, it really was this is where it all begins, which is exactly what you want from a pilot or from a premiere of a show, is this moment at the end of your first episode. This is our kickoff point to the end, basically. So, I thought it was really, really good. Steve, just the 2 characters that you mentioned, the 2 actors that you mentioned, Piper Perabo, plays, Linda Craft, drinky, don't give her any more alcohol. She's in the background. We'll definitely see more of her as the season goes on. Ethan Peck, I'm not surprised you didn't notice him. Ethan Peck plays Spock on Star Trek Discovery. Chris, I know you're a fan of that, and John, I know you're both a fan of that show. You only see him genuinely in one scene.
Yes.
He's in a Nazi outfit and he's standing to the right of Dr. Kraft when he's giving his speech. So he doesn't have any lines in this episode. I hope for his career that's not the only moment that he's in the episode, because standing in the background wearing a Nazi uniform doesn't go very well on your CV. So hopefully we'll see him back. We will see him back later on in the season.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Steve. And yes, you're right. 4 parts Magda in Penny Dreadful City of Angels. And yes, what I really like as well is, yes, it is brighter, less rainy, but it's also just as creepy.
Yeah.
I think that moment where Detective Michner and Tiago go into the Haslets' house, and there's something creepy about it. The orderedness. Yeah, they've come from this lovely sunny climate, yet it's like the darkness in LA is a shade lighter than the darkness in sooty Victorian England, but it's no less dark, if you know what I mean. Even just the idea that the cop on the bike says, we do things discreetly here. That's why there's only one of me here, so that, you know, all the neighbors aren't sort of craning their necks. So I thought that was really good. Yeah. Thanks, Steve, for the feedback. Really good to hear you.
Absolutely. Actually, it's just popped into my head. Of course, season 3 of Penny Dreadful was a lot brighter than the rest of the seasons, because we did have a lot of it spent in the Western America. So, yeah, that was quite bright.
Yes, it was very bright. I had to wear my sunglasses.
Final piece of feedback, because he's wonderful, our sort of temporary co-host for our Dreadful podcast, Ray, has sent in his thoughts on the first episode of Penny Dreadful City of Angels.
Hi guys, this is Ray, just dropping in some thoughts on the very first episode of Penny Dreadful City of Angels. Very exciting that it's here at last, so I just had to drop in my thoughts and let you know what I thought. Anyway, very different from, I guess, the original 3 seasons of Penny Dreadful, gone to the days of the Victorian era with all those classic characters, but kind of, you fell into this world pretty comfortably. Like, well, I felt I did anyway. And it was a good setup. There was a lot of characters to kind of introduce. I loved the Vega family, of course, and Lewis, the partner of Santiago, was really cool as well. But also Dr. Kraft, Councilman Townsend, all of them. They were pretty cool. My favorite, I guess, scene would have to be, I guess, the secret meeting that Townsend had with Goss. I thought that was just dripping with tension. I loved it. I was half expecting, I don't know why, but I was half expecting Goss to throw Townsend off the side of the cliff. Maybe they chose that location to kind of give you that sense of tension, but very well acted. Townsend's wonderfully, deliciously evil, and I love seeing him interact with Raul in the town hall. That was very interesting. Raul as well is one of my favorites. So I'm a little saddened that at the end, I guess we could see it coming, them talking about brother killing brother, race devouring race. I just didn't expect it to happen so soon. So, R.I.P. Raul. But he was really cool. He had a lot of fervor. He had a lot of passion within him, and you can kind of understand where he's coming from. He was well spoken when he went up against Townsend. So, and his interactions with his brothers, like Santiago and the other one, Manuel. I'm not sure what his name was, but they were really cool, especially that scene where they're just sitting on the street, just chatting away. Also, props to Mother Vega. She's awesome. And I love how she's kind of our little peek into the supernatural, her being a witch of sorts, and her confrontation with Santa Muerte was very fulfilling, I guess, because we didn't get much of that supernatural vibe except for at the very beginning, and that very odd scene of a German version of that evil deity ingesting her son through her stomach. But anyway, it was really cool. Finally, I guess Kraft, we also know his face from the previous seasons John Clare. He was very good. I'm not sure. I was kind of questioning how his German accent was, and similar to I forgot her name, the main deity, Dormer, her German accent as well. I'm wondering if you are a German, would you be kind of looking at it going, or listening to it going, that's a bit off. But for any non-German speaker, it sounded decent enough. So anyway, a very interesting first episode. I can't wait for the next one. And that ending with the, that kind of showdown and Santiago killing Raul was, I haven't even spoken about their 4 murders as well, who actually, incidentally, I thought Raul was involved because he talked about the hearts. Anyway, I better stop rambling. I can't wait to hear what you guys think. And, hope to watch the next one as soon as it drops. Catch you later, guys.
Great to hear from Ray. I hope we get to have Ray back on the podcast at some point over the course of the series to chat about City of Angels. I know he's a massive fan of Penny Dreadful as well, and it was great to have him on board for the past.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great to get your feedback there, Ray, for sure. Yeah, I'm totally with you. I fell into the world pretty comfortably here as well. And I think, like yourself, I would be a little bit shocked if Raul has gone so quickly, because he did really do some great counterpoints to both Townsend and his own brother. Really liked that. I'm kind of hoping maybe his brother at least tried to wound him before killing him. So I'm hoping maybe he got a bullet through the shin or the shoulder, even though I would probably still scream out in agony with that. So not that it's an easy shot, but I'm hoping maybe he's still alive. But yeah, we'll have to see in episode 2.
Yeah. And you're right, the interplay between the 3 brothers and their young sister Josephina, I thought was great. We only saw a little bit of that outside the record store, where Mateo, the youngest brother, is dragging out the guy that's leching on his sister, and then they're all having kind of a bit of banter, I suppose, about the fact that it's only because she's your sister you do that with other girls yourself, that kind of thing. I thought it felt, from a family of 5 brothers, so I totally know that kind of interplay that you have with your brothers, that kind of relationship you have where, especially being the youngest, you're always told that whatever you did was wrong. So I love that little bit of banter. That was cool.
Yeah.
Yes, and if we have any Penny faithfuls who listen along to us, please let me know if you are German what you thought of the accent. Is it close? Is it good? Yeah. Is it like mine? Does 2 become 1?
I honestly thought you were going to say, "Is it close, Chris?" That's how close it is now at the moment.
Yeah. I never said I had a good German accent,
but you're gonna try.
I am so gonna try throughout this season, and you're all gonna hate it so much. It's gonna be great.
So no matter how bad you think Rory Kinnear's accent is, at least you can say it's better than Chris's, right?
Exactly, and no matter how bad you think my singing is, wait till you hear my dialect. It's going to be worse.
At least touch typing whilst closing your eyes can't be shown through the podcast.
Yes.
Exactly.
John's terrible ability. Thank you so much for your thoughts about this episode. Hopefully we get more of them in over the next couple of weeks as we go through the rest of Penny Dreadful. Make sure you send them in to feedback@tvpodcastinterviews.com. If you didn't get a chance to put them in before this episode, you can share your thoughts about episode 1 again. We'll talk about it on next week's podcast. But we will be recording our episodes on Monday each week. So you have a chance to watch the episode and send in your thoughts.
But gentlemen, bling bling, I believe it's time to go to the pub.
Yes, Penny Faithfulers, we are at the dreadful pub quiz here at the Repertorio Musical Mexicano. Go grab yourself a tequila, join the Vega brothers, and join us for fonografos, pianos, lequianas aquí, and instrumentos. I say it was a bar. It is a musical place, but they were serving drinks as well.
They were, yes.
Like you would.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
It's kind of like an underground, almost like a speakeasy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it has a nice little atmosphere to it. So definitely, come join us. So basically, if this is new to you, there will be a pub quiz question for each episode of Penny Dreadful. City of Angels. It will relate to that episode. It may bring in other episodes. It depends how devilishly Santa Muerte I feel I need to be with the questions. But you will be in with a chance to win some Penny Dreadful goodies. For the person who gets the most answers correct, you can send them in to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or you can send them all in one go right at the end. But let's kick off with episode 1, pub quiz from Santa Muerte.
What's the question, John?
The question is, what is Detective Santiago Vega's LAPD badge number?
Ooh, I knew it was going to be for an eagle-eyed viewer. I knew it would be. And just to point out, when John says the person who gets the question, that most questions right gets the goodies, we've done 2 of these pub quizzes, and there has only been one winner both times. So it is definitely about the detail on answering these questions, right? Because John is a very strict taskmaster and a very strict marker on tests as well. So,
but the top 3 have always been tight as well. So it's been really competitive. And I enjoy doing these questions, and it seems like people enjoy, writing in with the answers. So send in your answer for episode 1 to the question, what is Detective Santiago Vega's LAPD badge number?
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much for joining us once again for our dreadful podcast on TV Podcast Industries. Hopefully you're going to join us for the rest of the series. Stay subscribed to the podcast on tvpodcastindustries.com or at thedreadfulpodcast.com, because it has its own feed as well. If you just want our Penny Dreadful podcasts, see it over there. If you're enjoying the show, share it with your friends. Sharing the podcast is sharing the love.
And don't forget, you can subscribe to us over on TV Podcast Industries, but more importantly, help us keep the lights on and the airwaves going and our mics powered by going to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, where you can donate a single $1, €1, a penny dreadful, if you will. We recently pre-launch early access our retrospective of Penny Dreadful there. We usually have some form of Patreon tiered gifts and things, early access, etc. So what we ask is go on over, check us out. If you like what you hear, throw us $1, throw us €1, throw us a penny, whatever you can spare. Times are tight, we know. So even just sharing the love is great.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you so much. Thanks for everybody that's been supporting us over on Patreon. Can't really do this without you. It's been great to get all the support over there. We'll be back next week with Penny Dreadful City of Angels episode 2, Dead People Lie Down, which will come out on May 3rd. Yes.
Yes, it's a bad thing if dead people sit up.
It's different for
this show. Well, then it's a zombie apocalypse.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Or it's Frankenstein's monster.
Oh,
indeed.
That's
it. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.
See you the 3rd.
Yeah, thanks so much, Penny Faithful, for joining us. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep praying.
Oh, I like that. That's better than keep screwing, actually, for this episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Auf Wiedersehen. Guten Tag. Goodbye.
Tschüss.
Tschüss.